Farm succession planning is tough, but you don't have to do it alone. The Dirt Project Live is coming to Owatonna, Minnesota, December 9th to 10th, 2025. In this 2-day workshop, your family will sit down with skilled instructors, work through tough decisions, and walk away with a clear path forward. You'll get expert guidance, practical tools, lifetime access to the online course, and accountability support after the event. Spots are limited, so don't wait. You can find a link in the show notes for more information.
Welcome to the Ag Inspo Podcast, where we delve into the dynamic world of agriculture, uncovering the stories that inspire, empower, and drive change. Join hosts Rena Striegel and Rabou as they explore the journeys of farmers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who are making a difference as they navigate the critical work of transitioning their operation to the next generation. From navigating family dynamics to developing the next generation of ag leaders, we'll bring you the insights and inspiration you need to thrive in today's ever-evolving agricultural landscape. So whether you're a seasoned industry veteran or just starting out, get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered as we learn from best practices and a few colossal failures on the Ag Inspo Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Ag Inspo Podcast. We are enthusiastic that you have joined us today. I'm here with my co-host, Rena Striegel, out of Des Moines. And today I am sitting on a tractor trying to get some wheat planted in southeastern Wyoming. We have a very special guest with us today, Justin Loeffler with the Wyoming Hemp Company. And Justin has just been really a mover and shaker in the state of Wyoming and really in the nation for hemp production, is doing some really, truly amazing things. And we are going to have a great chat with him today. He joins us from Hawk Springs, Wyoming, which is about 30 miles directly north of our farm. So Justin and I have known each other for a while. We knew of each other more than we knew each other, just through the hemp industry itself. And Justin has really taken the entire industry and made something of it. So Justin, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
You betcha. I admire your, every time I drive down Highway 85 and we're just about into Hawk Springs, which by the way, Rena, is a smaller town than the town that I am from, but they literally have two of the best restaurants in the state of Wyoming. Would you agree with that?
Very true. It's very true.
Yeah, and so when you drive in there, right before you hit the railroad tracks coming into Hawk Springs, you see a great big sign that says the Wyoming Hemp Company, and you have an irrigated circle there. You have some buildings, some storage sheds, some great things that you are doing. So let's kick off this morning, Justin, with you just give us a little bit of background history of you, how you got involved in the hemp industry, and kind of where this whole thing is going, and we'll kind of take that bit by bit. Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, sure. So, Ron, like you said, we've known of each other before we knew each other. In a previous life, I was a precision ag consultant. I worked for Pioneer, Monsanto, John Deere, and we moved out to Wyoming probably 20 years ago. My wife is a school psychologist there in Cheyenne, and we moved out here and we're like, what are we going to do? Like, what are you going to do, Justin? And luckily enough, we have some really great farmers. And what I figured out vastly, very quickly through the years was that we have some of the best farmers. And we deal with a lot of different conditions, different geographical locations. Technically, we don't exist on an agricultural spectrum. So, it's a different animal out here. But our farmers are incredibly tough, vigorous, and they work with a lot of different elements. And so I think that we have a really great demographic. And so as I was traveling around and vastly figuring out that our crop catalog is very, very thin, it became apparent to me that, we needed something else. We needed some other crops that we could grow that would allow for diversification, allow for other revenue streams for our farmers instead of just, the status quo of trying to compete with Nebraska and Iowa with corn and soybeans and their yields, and, just finding something that would work out here. And Ron, you can attest to this, that, we've tried garbanzo beans, we've done chickpeas, we've tried all sorts of different things, and it just doesn't seem to fit our geographical region. So in 2018, there was a hint that, industrial hemp was going to be coming around for legislation. So I dove right into that, and I saw something. I saw something that, it wouldn't require a lot of infrastructure change for our farmers. We are a hay and alfalfa state. That is our number one ag export. And so when you start looking at crops and commodities, you really have to bring that demographic into the conversation, because, again, that's where the vast majority of our acres are at. And so industrial hemp just happened to be one of those awesome crops that, we saw that, hey, this could really work. So we set out to really understand if it would actually grow here. So our first year of growing after the licensing process in 2019, we came into 2020 with a ton of different varieties, trying to figure out what would work, what wouldn't work. And then as we found out that it does grow tremendously well here, it fits within that 100-day growing season that we have here. We had to figure out, okay, it grows, but now what do we do with it? And so that led us down this path of figuring out, how do you process it? What varieties to grow? What is it going to be used for? What's those low-hanging fruit options that we can go to market with? And we really have done everything from soil to solutions. I feel like what we've done here at Wyoming Hemp Company is, we took it to a different level, a more cognizant, comprehensive level. If you look at other companies and in the industry as a whole, they've really taken a page out of the European model. And that is incredibly expensive. The equipment's hard to get. It only does so much. And so one of the very first conversations that we had when we were trying to figure out what we were going to do with our crop was I sat in with a group that was talking to Georgia Pacific. And it was a couple of analysts there. And that's when we vastly figured out that, man, we got to do this better. There's got to be a more cost-effective avenue for processing. There's got to be a better way to grow it, harvest it, the whole gamut. Because in that conversation, the analysts were talking about utilizing 500,000 acres for paper production. And again, whether that number was accurate or not, it definitely put a mindset into me that the equipment that is available, we couldn't process that much. If we wanted to make a dent in the paper industry, we were going to have to figure out, first we got to grow a bunch of it, but then we got to be able to process that. And Rena, you had said earlier before we got on the podcast that was one of the main things that you had heard, that the processing side was difficult, and it is. Decortication is a very difficult process. This happens to be one of the strongest fibers in nature. And so separating it and decorticating it was a massive lift. It was a big hurdle. So that's what we started going down the path. We didn't have, millions and millions of dollars to spend on equipment. We're ballers on a budget. So we had to figure out a farmerized way to be able to take this crop that farmers can grow and bring it in and blast it apart and get it down to its main parts, fiber and hurd. And that's what we've been doing. We've been doing this for the last 5 years. It has led us down a lot of different rabbit holes. But we have always stood by the fact that this is a tough crop for a tough demographic. And that's who we have here in Wyoming.
So let's back up a little bit then. And let's talk about that. Like when you began to look at hemp in 2018 to see what the different opportunities were, that's about the time that I was looking at it as well. And I had a landlord that was very enthusiastic about the opportunity to grow hemp. And I didn't really even know what hemp was. And I went to a seminar at the University of Nebraska at their campus in Kearney, Nebraska, and I learned quite a bit about it. And I'm like you, right? Like I became really enthusiastic about this, but at the time, the United States was the largest user of hemp products in the world, but we were the only industrialized nation that didn't allow their farmers to grow it.
Correct.
And so, so that seemed kind of like an ironic setup, right? So, legislatively at the national level, Congress began to look at this and say, why is this thing on the list for a banned crop? Because it is a cousin of marijuana. But I think it's important to distinguish the difference between hemp and marijuana, that although they look similar as a plant, that that hemp does not have any THC in it, because that's the psychoactive component in marijuana that exists. And so there was a lot of discussion at the time, right, when Congress was kind of tearing this thing apart and trying to get it legalized again. And we saw that as an opportunity that eventually it was going to get approved, and then we could move forward with doing this. Mm-hmm. And so in the beginning, it was a challenge because in the state of Wyoming, I think you can probably agree with me, when new opportunities arise, we have a tendency to be a little bit stubborn in accepting those changes, and a little bit anti-progress sometimes. And sometimes I think that ignorance is bliss, and so you only know what you know. And there were a lot of, when I was at the legislature with my landowner, we lobbied the bill to get it approved in the state of Wyoming. So we knew federally it was going to become deregulated, but the state had to pass a bill. And so that was a very, very arduous process. And basically the committee member where the bill went, the chairman put that bill in his desk and said, we're not talking about it on committee. And so I was working a lot of different avenues, ended up being able to get it changed from one committee to another. We ended up getting it passed. And the thing that I found is that the law enforcement lobby in Wyoming, while I have the utmost respect for them, told us they were behind this thing the whole way. But I think that law enforcement, behind the scenes was extremely nervous about where this whole thing was going to go and what it looked like. And so the bill never got any funding. So we got it passed. It never got any funding. We went into the next legislative session, and then that's when the bill got funding. So about that 2019 era where the state of Wyoming, through the Department of Agriculture, came up with their licensing process. You can get licensed as a farmer. So you started in on the industrial side of hemp because, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it touted on all the informational fact sheets about hemp that there are over 30,000 different products that can and have been made out of the hemp product? Is that right?
That's true. We were sold on the fact that, let's back up just a second, because you hit on some really great points. You're right about our conservativeness as a state, but I think that a lot of that, the hemp industry was still emerging, and a lot of that stuff that it started in 2014. We had some universities that were starting to kind of dabble with the hemp side of things. But then all of a sudden we had CBD wrapped up into the mix, and everybody just, instead of separating the two, saying, hey, this plant is grown for oil, for medicinal purposes, this and this, we're just going to take industrial hemp, we'll just wrap it all together, right? So as we started to see that, it was very apparent that these are two different commodities. They're definitely two different commodities. They needed to be treated as different. And instead of leading the charge the right way, we had a bunch of industry people that themselves didn't even understand the difference between the two plants. And so as we started to pass hemp legislation, everybody, it's like getting the race started and then going, hey, whoa, we forgot the gas. we had to backtrack, and we had to go back through there and segregate the two and say, no. CBD is, again, they are cousins, but CBD is meant to be grown inside. If it's a medicinal crop, it's meant to be in a greenhouse, where industrial hemp is for the agricultural farmers. Large scale, big ag, it should have been driven that direction. So I think that as we started to go down legislation path here in Wyoming, we did take a look at some things. We had some massive failures. And I think that kind of helped some things up as well. But I think that Wyoming did a great job kind of picking the things that were working in other states to, kind of devise what it is that our licensing process, our testing process. And again, it's all a learning curve, right? Like nobody knew anything. And so I think that.
And I think people were afraid of it, right?
Oh, yes.
Like they were completely afraid of it, because I remember when we grew our first crop of hemp, we had all of our ducks in a row, and we grew it. And the amount of vehicles, because we grew it on the state line, the amount of vehicles that were stopping and looking at our fields and people who were calling law enforcement was insane. And so I never suspected that would actually happen. But it, as a farmer, even though you're licensed and even though, everything is above board, it still made you pretty nervous because people were so skeptical of this because of the relation that hemp crop has to its cousin marijuana. And certainly our state's always been very, has stood very firm to, against essentially the marijuana industry. And, we border Colorado. And so there's a lot that goes on there. I think. And so, and I think I agree with you. I think that rightfully so, people were pretty nervous about this, but I think where you and I were always coming at this thing was, gosh, this is another opportunity for farmers to grow something, to diversify their farms, because it is, it's no lie, right? You and I play this game in Wyoming as farmers, and, it's questionable. It's questionable whether some of this ground should have ever been torn up and farmed in the first place. and so it's marginally productive land, and our weather patterns are not very cooperative here. So like you said, on the agriculture map, we're really not, we're not even on it.
No.
I've had people,
we don't get genetics made for us. We don't, we get kind of the hand-me-downs of whatever's working and says, oh, hey, this is our drought tolerant early season corn. It's the one that did the best in the worst scenario. So we're going to sell that out in Wyoming. So,
we're known for our ranches, right? Like these vast properties. 48 or 49% of Wyoming is federal land. And so, large sheep operations, large cattle operations, and like you said, haying, that was primarily it. But, as a farmer, you're always looking for opportunities, at least here. I know we're always looking for opportunities to grow something that cash flows and that makes sense for the environment in which we find ourselves in. So there were the marijuana industry in the other states where it was legalized was very concerned about cross-pollination because it's my understanding that those can only be like female plants. But, hemp is just going to, grow everywhere, and the pollen's going to go everywhere, just like it does with any other crop. And so I think we've done a pretty good job of getting past all of that stuff. And the climate has definitely changed. We have grown hemp not for industrial use, but we have grown hemp for seed. Right, because we're small grain farmers. So most people don't know that the hemp seed is one of the highest plant protein sources in the country.
That's correct.
And it's incredible the opportunities you have to grow that. So, I'm happy to, as we talk about challenges that you've faced, I'm happy to share some of those ones that we have faced in growing the hemp plant for seed. So we can get into that in a minute as well. But hopefully that gives everyone just a little bit of a background. Like, this didn't just all of a sudden explode. This has been a long time coming. There's been a lot of there's been a lot of discussion around it. There's been a lot of mistakes that have been made. There's been a lot of crop failures that have happened. A lot of people have invested, a good portion of what they owned into the hemp industry and have lost it all. Because, if just because you can grow a crop doesn't mean that you can sell it.
That's right.
And so you're becoming a master at figuring out how to do that. So we left off a second ago where you were talking about, industrial hemp, which is grown for fiber, which is a different seed variety than what I would grow, right? Mm-hmm. As a seed grower.
Yep.
So talk to our audience about what does that plant look like? How big is it? What does the harvesting process look like? And you mentioned separating the herd from the actual fiber. What does that mean? Sure. And if you can put all that stuff in context.
Yeah. So again, going back to the industrial side, Ron, we're right along the same page here. Our mentality has always been grain, fiber, and herd. Okay. That is what that plant was intentionally legalized for. If you go and talk to the Department of Agriculture in Colorado, and they've been messing with it since 2014, the groups down there completely took it and rearranged it for CBD, and it threw a wrench into absolutely everything. If we would have just done our part and the regulations and everything would have just allowed for fiber production, this would be a completely different story. We'd probably be light years ahead from where we are today, but it is not. Mm-hmm. So what we figured out is that once you get the crop grown, where is it going to go, right? And that goes into the whole how many processors are out there, the R&D, the different trials and tribulations that went down that. So really starting at the beginning, we said, okay, let's get this thing figured out. So we started going into fiber, and a lot of our varieties came from Asia. They came from Europe. They came from Canada, because we do not have in the U.S. we do not have propagation. We are not using CRISPR. There is no precision to these seeds at all. It's just historical seeds that have been grown in other countries for the last century. So as we got our hands on those, we figured out vastly that seed prices were way too expensive. If you take malt barley seed, wheat seed, and anything that the small grains, and you start looking at what those price comparisons are, this is completely different. So, finding out what those varieties were going to work, especially in our geographical region, that's why Wyoming Hemp Company has our own research farm. Not only to test varieties, but also to test on how we're going to harvest this. Right now, you run it through a swather that has any type of conditioner or roller in it, you're not going to be a very happy farmer. So we had to figure out different ways. And believe it or not, the very first year, we tried everything under the sun. And what worked was a Johnny Popper John Deere tractor and a 7-foot sickle bar. That's how we got our first crop out of the ground. We rewound history and went back in the old days and figured that out. Now you see companies coming out with these different types of cutters or different types of harvest equipment, and it's expensive. And that is another thing that we have got to be very cognizant about is the amount of input that a farmer is willing to put into a crop that he cannot sell. So as we start to go down that path, we figured out a way to harvest it. Once you get it harvested, the raking and baling is pretty standard. You do a tedder rake, a spinner rake, and then you can use a typical round baler or a square baler to get that crop picked up and stored. Then it came to
industrially with industrial hemp that you can do that,
mm-hmm.
right? And then you can bale it and you can process those bales. So I really want everyone to hear how you do that. Now, for us as seed growers,
mm-hmm.
where we're planting the seeds, we've gone in. We've raised hemp for 3 years. We've gone in and cut it with a combine.
Yep.
But that is, now we just plant with a regular drill, right?
Yep.
Like a 7.5 inch space, double disc drill. You let it grow. And incidentally, I don't know if if you guys have experienced this. We've always had a problem with emergence, but once that plant emerges, you can't kill it. And so just to get it out of the ground is enormously difficult. But once you do and you win that battle, you're going to have a great field. And so
it's definitely a crop that needs to be watered up.
Yes.
That's one of the things that we figured out very quickly is that, even over here in Hot Springs, we don't know if we're getting our irrigation on June 1st or July 1st. So our ability to be able to, roll out in the field as soon as water hits the ditch and get things planted so we can water it up. It's kind of the same way on the grain side too. You got to have water to kind of finish it out, which, that makes it difficult in certain situations. But to your point, Ron, like the infrastructure for our farmers to get into industrial hemp or grain is not, it's not that hard. It is literally just a couple little things that we had to learn, like you said, getting it out of the ground. But once it's up, it takes off. I mean, I've got corn guys that are surrounding me going, they planted 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks ahead of me, and my stuff will outpace it in no time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's a very, very resilient plant. And it's shocking its ability to survive. Like if it can survive here, it's tough.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And so, you made mention to the fibers, that the fiber of the plant is massively strong. And so when we went in and straight cut our hemp, we've kind of backed off of our production for a while until we can figure out a better harvesting system. Because when those stalks go inside the combine, they'll just wrap around everything inside the combine and literally break things because that fiber, once it starts wrapping, you're done.
Yep. If it rolls,
and whatever
it
it's got a hold of, it's going to break. That's how stout it is.
Oh yeah, this stuff is it's tremendous, and we put it through the ringer, so we kind of know what it can do as far as damage, and we know what not to do. So, so I mean, we're figuring a lot of that out, and I feel like we've done a great job of being able to build a blueprint for any of our farmers that we start contracting with to really kind of assist with mitigating risk. You start growing fiber, and the first thing that these guys will say right before harvest is, "Holy cow, I did not know it was going to be 15 foot tall. Like, how are we going to do this? What's going to go on here?" So, that's what we've done here at Wyoming Hemp Company is really taken on that mission to say, okay, if we're going to be that group, we need to have everything from genetics to in-season assistance to harvest, all the way down to the finalization of the contract and getting these guys paid. Where's this product going to go? So I think that's one of the major points. You start looking at what it takes after the fact. So, we start talking about the growing season. Well, it's a 100-day crop. You're going to use probably a third less water than corn does on your irrigated acres. We have grain and we have fiber. That is the two varieties that we are going to stick with, or at least with our farmers in Wyoming. It just seems to it bode better. We do have a herbicide program that was very taboo in the beginning. Everybody was like, "Oh gosh, don't be spraying that. There's no herbicide." There's a herbicide program. We out here in Wyoming, we rotate, and weeds and stuff like that are a real issue. And so us coming out to farmers saying, "Nope, don't need any herbicide, don't need any pesticide," they'll just look at you and go, "Well, we're not planting it." So we had to figure out a really good herbicide program. We've got stuff that we can put on before we go in the field, and we do have one that you can spray foliar after it's so tall to make sure that those weeds don't come through. Now, a lot of our organic guys, we have a program there that doesn't require any herbicide or definitely no pesticide. Hemp is a natural insecticide as it's growing, so it doesn't really need any pesticide. So we got all of that pretty much hammered out. We are still currently dabbling with different varieties. To your point, Ron, grain is coming. When you have a protein source like industrial hemp's grain that it can produce, you can't ignore it. And so right now we're working with the Hemp Feed Coalition. They got laying hens and chickens passed so that we can start doing grain production, but you still got to mill it. You still got to be able to harvest it and store it and dry it. So there's still a little bit of some legwork that goes into the grain side of things. But as soon as we start seeing those larger markets, I believe that they're going after feeder cattle next. That'll be a big one. And hopefully with the more acres that we grow, the lower the price will get. But that's one of the things that we're still hindering with in the industrial hemp sector is everything costs money. Everything is super and uber expensive. So, a feed ration for cattle is anywhere between 35 and 45 cents. You get hemp grain and you're rocking anywhere between $3 and $5 a pound. And that's a real high mountain to climb when you're starting to talk to livestock people. Yeah. So when you start looking at these things, we're still a little ways from getting it to be commercialized, but it is coming.
Are you a farm family facing big decisions about the future? Join us for the Dirt Project Live in Owatonna, Minnesota, December 9th to 10th, 2025. This two-day workshop is designed to help families like yours tackle succession planning with confidence. You'll work directly with experienced instructors, take part in hands-on exercises, and leave with a clear path forward. Plus, you'll get lifetime access to the Dirt Project online course and follow-up calls to keep you on track. Learn more at transitionpointva.com.
As we're talking about these different varieties and the things that they're used for, is there visually any difference? Like if you were to look and had marijuana parked next to industrial hemp, parked next to seed hemp, are they visually different, or are they?
Yes.
Or is that part of the thing that we had to overcome?
Rena, that is a great question because we get in that question all the time. If you drive by a CBD or a marijuana field, they look like Christmas trees. That's exactly what it is. Big old girthy stock, like you go out and cut down to put in your house. Okay. And they're awesome. They're awesome looking, different colors on them and stuff. But a true industrial plant, as you go out there, they're drilled. Like Ron said, you don't have 5 feet spacing in between each of these plants. It looks like, like a tree farm. This actually looks like, a sugarcane plant. It comes out a corn plant without any of the leaves on it. It gets really tall. Your stock diameter is probably going to be anywhere between 1/2 inch to 1 inch, depending on what variety and your seed population. But then it just shoots up through the ground, and it is, like this year we had, even with our drought, we had some plants out here that were 12 foot tall. So
it's insane. When we were planting it on dry land, you would plant it. We planted it the first year we planted it was we just didn't have hardly any rain.
Yeah.
And those plants were still 7 feet tall on dry land.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. I mean, they're a lot more spindly, Rena, so they're not as bushy of a plant. And you can tell a difference for sure.
Yeah. They're visually different. And so out of those things, though, you start to find out what each one of those is used for. And I think that's what makes Wyoming Hemp Company special, is we saw the avenue that the industry was going down, right? You had CBD and then you had fiber. And you'd go out and talk to all these people, and fiber only accounts for maybe 20% to 15% of the entire plant. The grain is probably the other 10 to 15%. But the other 55% is hurd. And that is the woody core. I use a example for, to kind of explain this. Think of a banana. The banana peel is the fiber. That's where you're getting your non-wovens. That's where you're getting your fiberglass replacement. That's where you're getting your clothing. But the banana itself, I think, was just completely lost on everybody, right? So people would be out there processing for fiber. They'd have all this byproduct from decortication, and they would put that out as, animal bedding or whatever else. And we'll get into that a little bit, but that's where we decided that, why are we throwing that away? That's the wood replacement. that's what we've been trying to do, right? Like, and Ron can attest this. My vision for Wyoming Hemp Company from the very beginning was replacing what we are using trees for, paper and building and construction materials. And so as we started going down this path of trying to figure out, how we're going to decorticate, how does it make sense to farmers? How do we do it cheaper than everybody else so that we can put up more of these mills instead of $110 million a site? How do we do that? And so that's really
important to point out. Yeah, it's important to point out that you mentioned paper products. So anything that the timber industry and the cotton industry produce, and whatever products are made from the timber industry and the cotton industry can be made with the hemp plant.
That's correct.
But the hemp plant grows annually. It takes less water than cotton does. It can be grown in a variety of different settings. How long does it take a tree to grow?
50 years.
It takes a long time. Even in a climate that's conducive to growing trees, it still takes a long time. So this is an opportunity which you have completely grabbed onto and are figuring out ways in which to use all sides of that plant.
Correct. We are going to have row crop guys here. And again, not touting, I'm a Wyoming guy. Everything that we are doing is based around my Wyoming farmers and my neighbors. I've worked all over the country. They're going to be fine. The other farmers, they're going to be fine. But here in Wyoming, we don't have that book of business. We don't have that crop catalog. So we have to have something that works in our rotations with the farmers and the equipment that they already have, that doesn't require all this change, and it can be simply implemented, but we got to have the manufacturing and the things to follow behind it. And that's really where we're at. We really have been trying to find a solution, to your point, Ron, for our Wyoming farmers, our Wyoming communities, our rural communities. And it just seems that, growing, again, raising more cattle or raising more corn acres or that's not doing it. It's just not doing it. We need to have something that actually can be grown, processed, and manufactured that the masses can use. And that was our paper conversation. As soon as I heard that we could, we ran out of toilet paper in 2020. How is that possible? I don't know. But we are still in a paper shortage in this country because we're running out of trees. And that is a fact. That is a very strong, bold fact. And I get a lot of flack for saying that, like, oh, it's just because we don't have the leases. No, this country will harvest 18 billion trees a year. We build 4.5 acres of new construction in this country every day. And we have fires and we have growth. We have people moving. And believe it or not, Wyoming is in a housing shortage. And so we start putting all these different pieces together, and it becomes very apparent that why are we not doing something and allowing our farmers who are the best gardeners on the planet, how comes we're not having them grow building and construction materials or tree replacement? And so I think that's really been the staple of what we've been hanging our hat on, is that, yes, we can do some cool things with hempcrete, and we can make animal bedding, and we can do all this stuff. But the reality of it, the long-term goal of this is to put the power of building and construction materials back to our family farms. And everybody gets a chance at this, not the big corporate farms that are really, they're farming for Monsanto or DuPont, and they've got, 20 to 30,000 acres. And this is for our guys out here that have a couple hundred acres, and they're doing hay, and they're going to take their hay out of rotation after 4 or 5 years. And instead of doing wheat or barley or something else, they can put in a hemp crop and get paid. So I think that's really where my mentality is at, if we don't exist on the agricultural spectrum, great, I'm left alone and I can go out and do this.
Yeah. What is the appetite from the industry? Like, you talk about the construction industry, and I love finding a solution or a replacement to deforestation. Like, I personally love that idea. What is the appetite in the industry for a wood replacement?
Yep. So great question. So we have obviously we went down that path too. So I'm very blessed to have some friends that are very large in the construction and building industry. One group of my like close friends, they build Hilton hotels, and there is all of this different movement to go to a sustainable building and construction material. Now, again, sustainability comes with a hefty price tag. So that's really been the hardest part about getting sustainable building products in there, as well as are they as good or better, right? Like if we're going to go from a tree product and go into something else, it has to be as good or better, right? People are willing to pay a little bit more for sustainability, but not that much. So I think as we start to have these conversations around legitimate, structurally sound products, I'm not talking about hempcrete with lime and whatever else that you use for insulation. I'm not talking about, you've got to have a structurally sound product that is ICC certified, that has been through the ringer. They're anxious. Everybody is looking at this because right now, we have a cement shortage. Only the big construction groups are able to get their hands on cement. And so you've got a lot of local and smaller construction groups that are looking for an alternative. So they're not getting, pegged at the ATM for that. I think that you have a ton of folks that are a little bit more wise to what's going on with climate change and some other things that are really wanting to, if they're going to build a home, they want to build it out of sustainable materials. We've got a new generation coming. We've got a new generation of population that's coming up that they're watching this happen. They're seeing that there's no trees. They're seeing that we're running out of water. The Ogallala Aquifer. It's all of these things that we thought was going to be forever. They're not forever. And so we need to be smarter about that. And I think it's up to us as the older generation that's still pretty savvy to help introduce a lot of those products. So I think that in my opinion, in the conversations that I have had with folks, like right now, Habitat for Humanity out of Cheyenne, met with Dan Dorsch there. He is just absolutely phenomenal. Great individual, totally understands and sees the picture. But Habitat for Humanity has a nationwide initiative that all their future build-outs are going to be of sustainable materials and solar powered and all these different things. We have to move in that direction.
Now you have some products that you have been experimenting with.
I have. So we have definitely really leaned hard into the building and construction materials. And like I said before, up until as of late, it has really been, hempcrete, which is more of an insulation, non-structural. You've got some different bat insulation that's made from the fiber that, again, you start thinking about homes and what people are willing to do and what they're willing not to do. We said we had to go a different route. So we started talking to different companies, both in board and block. And we started coming out with building and construction materials that are actually structural. And so, Ron, I shared those pictures with you. We built the first hemp shed out over our pivot controls for our farm. We are now utilizing hemp hurd to build particle board. And this particle board is ASTM's tested, ANSI project approved for modular homes, interior walls, roofing, flooring, furniture, all these things that our farmers can grow for, and they can be put into a building and construction material that everybody uses. And we're not going out there trying to replace OSB or typical plywood because, again, you're going against a 50-year cellulose versus 100. But there are a million different products, million of them, that these types of materials can supplement in. Military bunkers, when they are going from different locations and have to put up their plywood homes for where they're located at on the base. These are things that you can put up, our farmers can grow for, and we can have those types of contracts. And here's the best part about that entire thing is that they can grow this every year. We don't wait 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 years for that to be replaced. This can be grown year after year, and our farmers can get the benefit of it.
So just for just a production, like to just get some scope of what is produced, we talk about bushels when we talk about corn and beans. In terms of hemp on an
Mhm.
acre, what would you hope a reasonable year of growth would produce in terms of volume, and what would that translate into, just to get some scope about how productive these plants are?
Yeah, for sure. So let's go to the farming side. So we've heard all sorts of different numbers, but again, you got to bring it back home, right? So here in Wyoming, on an irrigated, I can't speak to dry land yet, but here on an irrigated acre for grain, you're looking at anywhere between 12 and 2,000 pounds of grain per acre on irrigated. On dry, on not on dry land, but on irrigated for fiber. Our goal is to really make sure that our farmers can get anywhere between 3 and 4 ton to the acre base, and I think that we're going to start seeing a lot more of that. Those yields increase as we start to get into better genetics and we get a better understanding of the farming. If I could put that all together, 1 acre over time will replace 4 acres of trees. So as you start to grow that, because again, it takes so long for a tree to grow, we can regrow this year after year. So 1 acre will replace 4 acres of trees. Our mill that we're looking at putting in here for the lumber side, we'll be able to do anywhere between 22 and 4,400 sheets of plywood. Now, again, if you look at like a group like Dakota Panel out of Rapid City, they're making anywhere between 180 to 200,000 sheets of plywood every month. So we're not at that scale yet, right, but we're still able to produce anywhere between 20 and 30 homes a month. So I think that, and also the way that we're doing this is, and I've told Ron this yesterday, that, in my little text that I sent him, like, my goal is to revitalize our rural ag communities. These are plants that and mills that can be put up centrally between all of our agricultural spots that not only give a new revenue for farmers, but it generates job creation and economic development. This is huge for us. I mean, we've got, we have the sugar beet factory here in Torrington that closed down, and that was a huge, tremendous amount of jobs lost. BNSF, the railroad, they shut down their deal over in Lincoln, and that was another tremendous amount of jobs. This is happening everywhere. So if we can revitalize things by bringing in a new crop that doesn't require infrastructure change to the farmer, we can grow the amounts that each one of these mills is going to need. That's going to create 10 to 20 jobs per mill. That's a huge boost in our Wyoming economy.
So I'm trying to get a picture in my mind of your world, Justin, because you talk about, we've got test fields and we've got a mill and we're doing plywood, and like, I'm trying to just get a visualization of what Justin's world looked like. So
it looks like spaghetti on a wall. Let's put it that way. It looks like spaghetti on a wall for a very long time.
I love it. But, but tell us, and you talk about the farmers. So just talk about the hemp company, what it's doing, and then how is it partnering with the farmers? Like just talk about your infrastructure there, because I think my visual in my brain is getting very dynamic and exciting, at least what I'm creating for you. So tell us all about that.
Yeah, so like I was telling you before, my background is precision agriculture, and that was one of the things that when I first moved out here to Wyoming, it was just a blank slate. You had select few farmers like Ron that had really grasped the concept of precision, making data-driven decisions, maximizing all your inputs, mitigating risk. And so as we started to get into the hemp side of things, I really brought that mantra to what we're doing, because a lot of the research was being done on the East Coast or the West Coast by some unsavory individuals that you just couldn't trust. So it was like, okay, are we going to really, break the bank and go after what this guy said, or do we need to start small, start figuring things out? So we immediately put in a research farm. That way we could bring the varieties here. We could test everything. Farmers could stop by and take a look. They could actually put eyes on the commodity and see what it looked like. So that was really kind of the basis of what we were doing. And we were hoping that eventually we're like, oh, hey, we'll sell seed. We'll help farmers get started. We had to do everything. And so that was even building our own brand. So as we started to go down that path, we had to figure out how to process. And again, to the point that we're ballers on a budget, we don't have a $5 million mill or a $20 million mill. We farmerized and built everything that we do, everything. We didn't buy a mill or anything from Europe. We didn't, hire a bunch of people. We literally farmerized the entire process. And so that gives us the ability to be very pliable, which to our success has boded very well for us because, again, we weren't so pregnant with something that we had spent tens of millions of dollars on that we, found out we could actually bob and weave. So going back to that spaghetti on the wall comment, that was what it was. It was like, all right, we got to figure this thing out. And so we actually built a brand and we started doing animal bedding just because at the end of the day, animal bedding proved our quantity processing of how much we could process. It proved our cleanliness because, again, we're putting this in with animals, big high dollar show animals, race horses. I mean, the whole gamut. And then it also showed that our packaging capabilities. So it really allowed us to kind of bring in that different demographic and show the quality and quantity of our work. Now, to your point on farmer interest and things of that nature, I get phone calls every week. Every week I get calls from either regional guys all the way from Western Nebraska to Idaho and all throughout our state of Wyoming. Guys in Jackson, guys in Powell, guys in Worland, all of our farmers around here. They're always asking, Justin, are we ready to go yet? And I think that has been the toughest part for me is telling them no. Because again, if you look at other states and what had happened is they went out and they overgrew what they could actually process. And so what we've been really trying to do is make sure that we have a process mantra that works for everybody. Because if you're going to go out there and grow several thousands of acres, you got to be able to process that. Right. But also, is there a market? Because the last thing I want to do is have a bunch of farmers grow and then call them and go, hey, we can't sell your commodity. And that's what's been going on for the last 4 or 5 years. We see that across the board. So I think that the model that we have has been working. We've been buying crop from other places. So we buy from Kansas, we buy it from South Dakota, we buy it from Montana and Idaho, Nebraska, because those farmers grew. And, has it been a tremendous crop? Not all the time, but it works for our needs right now. It is our hope that once we get everything solidified here, we will be starting with our farmers here in Wyoming, and they have a guarantee to get paid. Awesome. So we've built everything. No blueprint. We are the blueprint. Again, we farmerized it, and when people come and visit our property, you can go visit other hemp processors in the country, and it's just like, a Walmart DC type of scenario, big grain, big elevator type thing, but they can only process a minuscule amount because they're all fiber. Here, we are after the herd and we blow stuff up. We like to, we're like Elon Musk. We're not afraid to blow stuff up to figure it out.
So when you say we, who is the we? Who is the we?
Yeah, so I've been very blessed to have my family work with me. So we're a family operation. My sister, she basically runs the entire joint. My brother-in-law works here. My other brother's coming in. We have a couple folks from Torrington that also work for us. So we have 6 employees and several contractors that help us here at the place, and as well as marketing and some other things.
Awesome. That's so great. And so remind me again, when did you start? You started this in?
Yeah, so we started in 2020 was when 2020. We established, and we went through a couple different renditions of our name. And so we landed on Wyoming Hemp Company. We were blessed enough to get that name. I think we've done a good job of representing our state. Again, that's another thing, you put a name like that on there, you're not representing just yourself and your business, you're representing the state of Wyoming. So we've done a really good job of working with the Department of Agriculture, our legislators, our senators to keep them informed of what we're doing. But yeah, so we started in 2020 and we're still vertical.
That's wonderful. In an industry where you had a lot of predecessors in terms of being able to watch some of the things that they maybe lent as far as mistakes that helped others learn quicker. what would you say has been some of the biggest learnings of coming into, you're basically coming into a brand new industry, a brand new way of doing business for you. You're farmerizing everything, which, when you work in the world of precision, you probably didn't get a whole lot of opportunity to flex that skill working for John Deere. So tell us a little bit about the big learnings that you've had in the last 5 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, this may sound a little cliche, but every step has been a learning curve. Absolutely every step. Being the precision ag guy that I was and the big companies that I worked with, I just thought I was going to come in here and roll the industry. And that is absolutely incorrect. We have been very fortunate enough to hang with some of the biggest hemp folks in the country. And I think that they don't see us as a threat. And I think that has allowed the doors of communication to be open in a typical situation where a lot of people have invested their livelihood. They've got tens of millions of dollars wrapped up in this, and sharing information is a little bit difficult for them. But where we took our path, and we're out here in the middle of nowhere, that allowed for a lot of good conversation. And so we've found our group. We found our group of folks that we trust and we can talk to, but every step has been R&D. From finding genetics that work. You get on the phone with some guy from Asia and you're looking at latitudes and longitude, and they're like, "Oh, you're just right across." It doesn't. It doesn't work that way. From fertility and finding a fertilizer program that works. Because again, we're going after something that nobody else is going after. Everybody else is going after fiber or CBD or anything like that. We're going after girthy stalks to replace trees. So that's a different fertility program. Harvesting, man, wow, we went through a lot of equipment. We've tore a lot of stuff up. So, we had to farmerize it because farmers are tough and that's the equipment that they need. So, I think the biggest learning curve, or the thing that I took away, is persistence. Persistence will beat talent every day of the week. You can talk to the smartest guy in the room, and I will guarantee you I will outwork him.
Yeah. So how has, as you've been able to bring this level of education, understanding, being able to show the value add, I think that's a very clear case for why we should, sort of love and embrace industrial hemp. How have you seen over the last 5 years, has the thought around the legislation of it, the support for it, have you seen that change, or are they still kind of side-eyeing you a little bit, expecting you to have like a marijuana stash right smack in the middle of the field somewhere?
I will tell you, probably in the beginning, I was getting some looks. It was like really confusing. The state patrol would drive by every once in a while, and we'd wave them in, like, come look, like, come take a look at what we're doing. I think that we have, in my opinion, there's probably quite a few naysayers still out there. And to those folks, I would tell them, contact us. Come see what we're doing. Come walk, touch, feel, see what exactly we're doing. But I think that persistence piece, and being an honest, God-fearing individual that's really just trying to ensure that, we're doing it for the right reasons. I think that we've beat that. I think that people call us from the Department of Ag, or they'll call us from legislation, because they do want to know. They want to know what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I think that this is only going to get bigger, right? Like, even today, up to about 5 months ago, I don't think there was a banker in Wyoming that would bank this. They wouldn't add it to the operating notes of the existing farmers. We were lucky enough to host the Wyoming Banking Association, and had 42 bankers throughout the state show up. And you could tell they were tired. They'd been on this tour for 3 days, but we got them here. Within the first 5 minutes, their eyes just perked up, and they saw the writing on the wall. They deal with farmers on an everyday basis. And I think in deep down in some of their hearts, they're looking for something to help these guys, evolve and progress. And so when they get to come out and they see it in a round bale, and this doesn't smell like what I thought it was. And this is hemp hurt. It looks like wood chips. Yes, that's the message. And it's been a lot of education, Rena. I mean, it's been a lot of education. No venue's been too big or too small for us. We just got back from State Fair a couple weeks ago and had a booth, and we were jam-packed the entire time because people, they saw hemp and they come over, and I don't know how many people asked us if they could smoke it or if this is something you could, but you just gotta play that role and talk to them. And, if you can talk to one person, they're going to talk to others, and it'll get out the right way.
Yeah. So if you have a hemp bale, so let's just say we've taken it out. Does it need to be dried in the field, or do you just?
So dry it just like hay. Now that's a great point. Let me touch on that really quick, because again, this is one of those avenues. Again, we have 100 days. We have 100 days here in Wyoming, and a lot of the fiber processors out there, they do what they need the crop to ret. And I don't know if you guys know what retting is. I'm sure Ron knows what retting is, but retting is the natural rotting process. Okay. And so what that does is they'll swath the crop down. They let it lay out there. Some people will put water on it and irrigate it while it's swathed down. But what happens is that plant starts to naturally rot, and the lignin that holds the fibers together starts to decompose. It's a natural cottonizing process. This will take anywhere between 10 and 30 weeks, depending on who's doing it. And we don't have that kind of time. So that was why it was really important for us to find another avenue outside of fiber and this retting process that our farmers can, it dries down really quick here in our state, 8 to 10 days. We get it down to about 8% moisture, rake it up and bale it. So we don't do retting. And I think that's what's hindered a lot of guys, because to Ron's point, when he was messing with that fiber after harvest, I remember Ron was telling me a story of him going through and disking and chisel or whatever work in the field. They just bind up and everything else. That retting process, that hemp herd gets as strong as a hickory bat. And you try to run that through a baler, you're going to be plugging, you're going to be doing all sorts of things. So finding another avenue for the harvest side, that was another big thing. But yes, going back to that, you swath it, lay it down, it dries for 8 to 10 days, get it down to 8 to 10% moisture, and you bale it, bring it to us.
And so then when you have the bale, I'm assuming then as long as it's properly stored, you could have massive inventory sitting at your facility, and then you'd have like a whole winter's worth of processing that you can do.
Yep.
So does it score as well as it appears to be able to do a lot of things? Is it tough in terms of its storage capabilities?
Yeah, we've actually purchased bales that have been anywhere between 1 year and 2 years old. Because again, we're going for the herd product. Now, again, going into those types of situations, we pride ourselves on premium product. Again, we're putting this in with animals. That's kind of our business right now, is the animal bedding side of things. So we have to be very choosy and picky of what we're getting. Some of these guys have grown and didn't use a herbicide program, so it's got a lot of weeds in it. The herd, depending on the degradation, if the mold has gotten into the herd, that's what we've been looking at very closely, depending on what products you're going into. Now, let's say we start putting it into building and construction materials. A lot of that older stuff can go into hempcrete, because the lime and everything breaks that down. But at the end of the day, it is going to be our goal to, just like you said, we're going to bring in a year's worth of crop. We're going to be able to process and be ready for next harvest. This stuff won't sit for very long.
Now, you keep using a term.
Talk about the difference between wood shavings and hemp herd when it comes to livestock bedding.
Yep, great. So thank you, Ron, for that. So what we're also finding out is when you're using tree cellulose for bedding, there's toxins in it. Depending on what you're getting, there can be toxins in the tree cellulose, so like phenols and certain things of that nature. The other thing too is it's not as absorbent. So we have a lot of show folks that will use cedar, and they're like they're cooling barns to keep the smell down and everything else. Hemp has a very natural, neutral smell to it, and it is so absorbent. It's called hygroscopic. And what that means is if you were able to look at a piece of hemp herd underneath a microscope, you will find a bazillion, I don't think that's a word, but I think you get a bazillion little tiny holes going through that herd. And that's what makes it so absorbent. So the same properties that make it a great animal bedding for absorption and odor control make it an even better building and construction material because it actually sucks up those binders a lot better and more efficiently. So what we've also found is that in that building that we build out here on the farm, man, it used a lot of primer. We put that thing up there and I mean, just suck the primer up and it looks awesome. But yeah, it's definitely super absorbent. We've got a lot of folks that are actually switching over from cedar because a lot of that has to come from Texas. And so we have a lot of animal folks here in Wyoming and in the surrounding regions that are switching to herd.
Awesome. Now you've used another term. I think you've been calling it hempcrete.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me what that is. I think my brain has put it together, but explain what that product is.
Sure. So hempcrete is the original building material that everybody started kind of, again, fiber processors. 20% of the plant is fiber, 15% of it. So there's a lot of herd. And in Europe, what they'll do is they'll combine hemp herd with lime. And in 10, 15 years, the herd starts to petrify and the lime gets harder over time. And so they brought that technology and that way of building over here, but we don't build like that. Like, let's just be completely honest. We don't build like that. Builders don't do that. It's more of an artisan type of situation where you've got people that are wanting to do this project. It takes, this specific thing, the binder that they're using. And it's more of an artisan type project for people that are really super green. That accounts for maybe 1% or less. And so again, going back to the structure side, that's where we were like, look, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to start incorporating different things of the hemp plant into already existing materials. So instead of aggregate, use hemp herd, make the block a little bit lighter. It's a super absorbent. So now we can actually replace a lot of the cement that's going into it and add these other binders along with a little cement. And we're still carrying a 2,600 PSI rating. That's all it is. When we first started doing our hemp herd experiments, we were lucky enough to have a company here in Torrington called Nature's Composite. And they were doing extruded boards like Trex decking. And so we started dabbling our cellulose instead of barley straw or wheat straw cellulose. And what we found was that it binds so much better. The unfortunate piece is that hemp herd's way more expensive than barley straw. When you can get a product for 5 cents a pound, they're going to go with that one. And it's the same way with plywood. I'm going to go on a tangent. Trees should have been way more expensive than what they are today. We have one of the most wonderful families in the state of Wyoming that is a logging mill family north of us, and they're feeling the strain of losing trees and not having enough trees for harvest. Mm-hmm. And that is because that trees just never had the value that they should have had. Things that are made of wood should cost quadruple what they cost right now because we're seeing that on the spectrum. And when you look at how plywood is made, they're able to get tree cellulose for pennies on the dollar. Cheap, 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 cheap. And now we are running out of them and nobody's making any money. So, going back to these different building and construction materials, my goal is to say, okay, we can build something that is cost effective, that still pays our farmers. In the back of my mind, I'm still a farmer. That's always in the back of my mind. And when you start looking at these different products, who's the first guy to get hosed over? It's the farmers. If we can build a product that holds a value for the farmer to be able to make good money on the front end, and we still have a realistic product at a realistic price point on the end, we all win.
Absolutely. So hemp, I know you've talked a lot about, hemp and its hardiness and its growing in, the conditions that you guys have out in Wyoming. Is it a product that literally is adaptable to almost any scenario? Is it one of those types of plants or does it really thrive in certain kinds of conditions?
It really does thrive in certain conditions. But my mantra is, if it'll grow in Wyoming, it'll grow anywhere. It's just that's just the motto, right?
The fact.
We are the toughest place to grow. We have the toughest farming demographic because of everything that we're going through. But here in Wyoming, with our arid environment, it does tremendously well. It can definitely be one of those saving grace crops that we have out here. But if you take that same variety and you go to Nebraska, or you go to Kansas, or you go to Iowa, they just have better conditions. They do. They're not trying to farm on a mountain and rocks. So we're always going to kind of lag there. The thing that we're going to win at is our ingenuity and our innovativeness. That's what we're bringing to the table. Is a lot of these other places have different processing facilities that they've put a lot into. Here at Wyoming Hemp Company and in our state, we know what we are, and we know what we aren't.
I love it. I love it. Clarity is power, right?
That's
always.
Right. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Stay in your lane. So I think that, again, it's been a long road. But I think that, as soon as we have a really good head start, we have a really good base underneath of us, that once we start putting in these other little pieces, which we're working on currently, we're really hoping that the plywood mill is built here in early 2026. This will allow us as a state and surrounding areas to be able to kind of beat the curve when it comes to hemp production, because now our farmers will actually have something justifiable to grow for, instead of just, hey, go grow it and we'll see what happens.
Yep. No, I love that, because I do think, early days, right, when they were like, oh, this is a new crop, here's all these new markets, here's what it's used for, everybody got super, super excited about it. And we had a lot of farmers in those first couple of years that tried to jump in there as a new commodity crop, and there was no market for it. It was very hard to place that crop somewhere.
Yep, it was. Everybody was sold a bill of goods that never came about. Even in the early CBD days of 2018, we grew 120,000 acres of CBD plants, and we only had the ability to process 22,000 of those acres. There was a huge misconception. I mean, I bought into it big time. I know a lot of other people that did, because again, at the end of the day, it was like, here's something new. Maybe we can all make money on this. Maybe this will be the thing. And what we found out is, out of those 30 to 50,000 different uses that Ron and I were talking about at the beginning, none of them were here. None of them were here. They were all in Europe, or they were being talked about in a lab, or they were being done at some university that didn't have funding. It was just a ton of talk with nothing happening. And then, of course, the old mantra, the green, the field of dreams model. If you grow it, they'll come, or you build it, they will come. Nobody showed up. And so I think over the last 4 years and 5 years, what we've been finding and seeing is the fake demographic have been weeded out. They ran out of money. The real guys that are still in the fight, IND Hemp, Panda Biotech, South Bend Hemp, these guys, they are true innovators along with us that really see the value and see the long-term effects that this crop can have in agriculture. That's why we're still here. But everybody has their own little avenue, right? So they've made some successes here. Those guys have made some successes there. We're doing a different thing. And I think that's what's allowing this melting pot of collaboration between us all to find out, okay, hey, instead of doing all these fiber mills, maybe we need more of Wyoming Hemp Company's mills set up, because they're a lot less expensive and they do a lot more processing. On the flip side, those mills that they're building need to go to maybe some other areas in the country that don't require, or their plants will never get a lot of herd. It's going to be a lot of fiber. We're figuring that all out collectively.
Nice.
And again, I think that's a benefit.
Yeah. I like that collaboration piece and kind of the web that you're creating. Everybody has a lane, but there's still things that can be shared across to raise awareness all across the industry about the use and how that can impact the people that grow it. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, we think so. And I think this building and construction material, what better place to do that than right here at home. We have people after COVID, and again, our wind can't keep them away, our weather can't keep them away. They're coming, they are. But we have a lot of people in a lot of communities that need housing. I think that we have 3 modular home companies that are moving to Wyoming to start building homes, and we want to be one of those suppliers. And I think that we'll see a lot more traction, especially with how we're doing things and promoting that farmer grown piece.
That's amazing.
So what would be your advice?
Oh,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rena.
No. Go ahead, Ron. You got it.
Well, I was just going to say, what's your advice to farmers who are thinking about raising hemp? For what would be your advice to them just initially getting in?
Yep. So the first thing is always have a market for your commodity. Always. Number one, whether that's us, whether that's somebody else. There's only a few of us left. So, there's not hard to find a processor or whatever to find out if there's a need. So always make sure you have that contract. But I guess the other thing too is also understand that this is still new, right? We're doing everything we can to mitigate risk. Nothing in agriculture is perfect. You know this, Ron. Every day you wake up and there's going to be some headache. There's going to be something that goes awry. And you just have to have the ability to think outside the box and have the resources to figure it out. But don't think that this is going to make you millions of dollars next year. This is not. Those days are over. This is going to be another reliable rotational crop that you can bank on to carry over and make a little money on. But you're not going to make millions doing this. Those hemp days and that hemp story is over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's going to be really fun to follow up with you like in the next year or two once you get, the plywood piece of your operation online to see how that is hitting the marketplace. So we just thank you so much, Justin, for your leadership, your tenacity, your drive to, improve the lives of others. I'm fascinated by what you're doing, and I'm also extremely excited about it because I think what we are learning is that is to have that connection between the farmer and the market and to control the pieces in between so that the profitability is not lost out of the products that we grow is becoming incredibly important. And so to hear you talking about that value add, protecting the farmer, protecting the price margins, I think all of that is exactly the direction that we need to be going. And I'm very excited to see you succeed in doing that.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Like I said, it's an education piece. And I think we're confident enough now that people just need to understand what we're doing and know what we're doing and be excited because good things are coming. Big things are coming around the corner. And, I think that we're right for the picking. So I appreciate you guys.
Wonderful.
Well, and I would encourage our audience to make sure that if they have any questions at all, in the show notes, we'll have some information in there. They can reach out to the Wyoming Hemp Company. They can reach out to you, Justin, and visit with you. Justin, if you haven't been able to figure it out, Justin is a total wealth of knowledge about the hemp industry and about the hemp plant and where we're at today, where we're going in the future. He's I think one of the top contacts in the hemp industry in our entire country because of what you're doing and your innovative approach to things, your positive attitude that you have towards the industry, towards agriculture. Because the fact of the matter is this: if we can help small farmers succeed, we can help our small communities succeed.
Absolutely.
And we need more of that in America. We need more opportunities in rural communities because that is really no pun intended, that is the fiber that holds this country together. And so thanks for everything that you have put in. We'll continue to stay in touch. It would be, I think Rena and I would both agree that we would love to have you come back in a year or two, and let's just talk about this a little bit more and figure out, where it's gone in the interim, and where you're headed. And so once again, everyone, the show notes are going to be down there. Justin's contact information will be down there. Justin Loeffler, Wyoming Hemp Company. Justin, thank you so much for joining us today on Ag Inspo.
Thank you guys very much. It was my pleasure.
You've been listening to the Ag Inspo Podcast with Ron Rabou and Rena Striegel. Find Ag Inspo on Transition Point Business Advisors or Farm Journal's YouTube channels, as well as anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. For more information about today's guest or the resources referenced today, please see the show notes listed below. Join us next time when we will meet another inspirational leader who has taken those small steps to bring about really big change.